You think this is good? Okay, all right. If Mina thinks it's good, I'm down. This is a interesting course title that you guys have to me because a lot of those intersections with geography or cartography or identity or place and space, they run in a lot of different through channels through my work. And also, I completely disregard things like geography or cartography until it becomes apparent that it's really just right in my face. So the work that Mina talked about, Plainclothes Agenda, that was a body of work of me walking through a city, or walking through any city or any space, or even driving a car. And the idea of being enveloped in a space or immersed in a space and trying to pick up on social cues from my environment, or the environment picking up on social cues from me. But before I go into that, I wanted to point out the work that was recently awarded that Mina was also pointing out from the Strikeware Collective. Now, I started this, or I was engaged in, like, well, me and my friends basically started a collective right out of grad school. So I left grad school in 2018, graduated with a degree in intermedia and digital arts. And me and two other friends from that program decided to start this collective. And we started doing grant writing, and we started getting awards for a body of work that is more about tying history and present day narratives to sculpture and interactive sculpture. So just informing these in these two photographs here, we wanted to have our audience engage with our work, to touch the work, to access it either digitally or through augmented reality or through finite, tactile sculpture that you could touch and that you could basically be a part of. So this body of work has been covered by various news stations, and we've been hitting upon a lot of different themes with this work, but most recently, it has to do with a certain building in Baltimore. And this is, again, tying that idea that you guys as students, you're all in Baltimore, or at least living in various, probably on campus of MICA, if not, close by. This building is not really a stone's throw away from MICA, but it is just south of it. And the nature of this building and a lot of buildings in Baltimore is that they do stand abandoned. This particular building held special importance to me because someone introduced it to me when I first moved to Baltimore in 2013. Now, I'm from Maryland, and I really never started accessing Baltimore until my mid-20s, mid to late 20s actually. And I'm 38 now, so it wasn't really until I stepped foot in an art space in Baltimore that I felt more connected to the place. And this is one of these art centers. This building, what you see here is a photograph behind, or you see actually a 3D model of the building on the phone, capturing what is inside of a photograph. So the AR, the augmented reality, is revealing something that you can't necessarily see with the naked eye, but you can see on a phone screen, or you can, in theory, put on a virtual headset and walk around a 3D model. This is just the development phase of this photograph. But what I'm about to show you is why this building was important, and where, to us as a group, we started seeing, meaning my collective Strikeware, we started to see how buildings in Baltimore, whether they stand almost in complete dereliction or complete destruction, have actually some form of monumental reprise. So they can grow out of, there's a story there. There's actually reason for these places to be on the map and a part of our cities. So this is just a short insert that I'm going to play. Now I want to, before I play, can you guys hear okay? Yeah, okay.
At 82, Daniel Comegys can still hit the notes. his voice filled with years of perfecting his craft and performing. It all started here at the Baltimore Institute of Musical Arts at 811 West Lambell Street when he was 12 years old.
Black students were unable to go to the Peabody Conservatory of Music. And so the teachers from the Peabody Preparatory Department taught us.
I can't believe I came here 7 years ago.
Christopher Kozar and Molly Bendel are with Strikeware, a Baltimore-based art collective. The two have been researching the school.
There was just no place for Black students to go and learn under the tutelage of composers or people who had a high standing in the musical industry then.
This school was founded by a composer named A. Jack Thomas. He was the first African-American to conduct a performance of the BSO. He was a prominent composer who achieved national recognition.
That performance was held at Douglas High School in 1946. Thomas founded the school in 1944 as an integrated conservatory that would take students of any race or background, and by default, the students were predominantly Black. Comegys went to the Institute through high school.
And it was there I met my teacher who trained me. His name was Frank Whitmore. And the other teacher was Igor Chichagov, who played the piano and accompanied and taught you the style. One taught you technique, how to sing, and the other one taught you the songs. That's at Morgan.
After earning a degree at Morgan State University in political science, he continued to study music, which took him all over the world.
This is me in the hall that Brahms opened up in Vienna. It gave me the foundation to go anywhere and meet anybody. Here's the Prime Minister of Israel, the Prime Minister of India, and Mr. Comedy. So when I got to Paris, I knew French. When I got to Germany, I knew German.
Comegys lived in Austria for 10 years. He sang all over Germany, and back here at home, Independence Hall and the National Gallery of Art, just to name a few. He says it was this bit of advice someone gave him that helped carry him through.
Every closed door is an open one, and every door to failure is the door to success. And that's what stuck with me.
And a note from the Peabody Conservatory was a shut door that opened the window to his future. Lisa Robinson, WBAL, TV 11 News.
That's it.
Okay. So I hope the sound was okay. Mina, can you just verify that the sound was all right? Was it? Okay. I'm usually not on Zoom that often, so it might be playing for my speakers. So where can I go with this? So we, as a group, and even I as an individual artist, we find ourselves as artists in media, and we claim many roles. So Mina listed off a bunch of roles that I have, and I think one role that's hard to really grasp onto that she didn't mention was producer in media. So the idea that I'm an artist and a media artist, there is kind of like a reckoning with these qualifiers that I think can't go unsaid. Because I'm an artist and a new media artist, we're trying to find ways to really encapsulate stories in art with the production role, say, of this station to be left to producers, to be left to filmmakers. There are stories like this that when pairing it with artwork, I find to be incredibly challenging. How do we tell a story of someone? How do we tell a story of living people, of people who want to be heard when, even in the past, when we're not just filmmakers, when we are new media artists? And I think when I get to this and I get into exposing a lot of the work that I'm going to show you today, a lot of it is process work. A lot of it is work that I'm still uncovering. What is the actual discrete art form that I want to be engaged, that I want the audience to engage with when they're in the gallery? And with Strikeware, and I'll go back a slide, that's why we started making work like this. So the piece on the right, with the chalkboard piece, it's a lot of media in that piece. There are newspaper clippings that one of my colleagues, Molly Bendel, gathered and researched upon through the Baltimore Sun, through the Afro newspaper. And in gathering that media, there's a story there. How do we make that story art? Or the piece to the left, it's actually a piece with a phone in it, and there's a documentary playing inside that phone, a 360-degree documentary that you can kind of move with your hands and look around a building. And a lot of these protected sites, a lot of these sites important to Black history, whether it is the Upton Mansion that you just heard about, or these various places that are on display in this exhibit, or in Baltimore itself, there's a lot of richness in the environments that you're in, and a lot of Black history in a predominantly Black city that it's really hard to access as an individual just walking the streets, or an individual at a school, or an artist. How do you correctly tell a narrative with new media art? I think that's the biggest challenge that I'm just going to leave there. Skip this, and play this. So when I was in grad school, and this is a cover of a book. This is a book that actually Wagner Whitehead had sent to me through the New Media Caucus. And the title of the book is Contemporary Flannery. Now, this is going into this idea of Wagner once said, we're all new media artists, but we're just using photographs to tell our work. And I found this cover to be kind of engaging, because it was like, okay, well, we are new media artists, and even in this book, there's a lot of new media art. But when we're telling our own way of discovering a city, we have to bring light to maybe the tools that we use. So the idea of contemporary Flannery, if I could just break it down, Flannery is just the idea of hanging out. It's walking through a city, or it's documenting, or it's just sitting down in an urban environment. When I think of this book cover, and I think of your class, it is charting spaces within your own body, and it's also charting spaces within the world. So a simple example is, like, if you wanted to get inventive with Flannery, is you could take a map of DC and navigate Baltimore with that map of DC. Say you find particular street names that are the same, you find ways to like get there, you find new and inventive ways to explore your environment. I think that's kind of encapsulating what this work is. And I'm jumping over to a whole different topic, because this is more in line with my personal practice, whereas the work with Strikeware, even though it is discovering urbanity, my personal practice was a little different. It was discovering urbanity in the midst of being aware of how Black men and women need to move about cities. So I'm not really going to play the audio from this, but this camera right here is showing me pulling up to a border control stop in New Mexico with two friends. And I should play the audio, but it's a little bit damning, because we have a person in the car who does not have a US passport. And the border control agent, now this stop is about 40 miles outside of the US-Mexico border. The border agent is asking us, are you all US citizens? And immediately I point to the back and I'm like, that guy's not a US citizen. And there's a reason for this engagement that has to happen at the US-Mexico border. We have been kind of, even today, it's a very heavy topic, and it's a serious topic that there are 150,000 minors that are coming into the United States, and there's no recognition of how to really have them claim their own space and ownership of space in this country or in their country. So the refugee status is a very hot topic, and it's hot not because of the politicization of it. It's really, there's so many other narratives that are going on. What I'm showing this is because this to me is almost like a normal occurrence to cross a border or to engage with police officers in the United States on almost like a friendly level. And I know my boundaries in a way. If you reviewed any of my work, it'll kind of show you that I do have certain boundaries that I always cross. And when I go to France or when I go to another country, when I shot this photograph, I realized that I was engaging with a different boundary of spaces. And I was actually the out-of-towner. I was the refugee. I was the foreigner. And I'm seeing that I have to go inside to other cities and be of a different person, be of a different, what you see here is basically 3 different groups of people. So there's the head-on straight shot of a man who's protesting what he thinks is grave transgressions against the U.S. Not the U.S. Grave transgressions against the Black Blocs, which is a group of people in France from the French government. Then there are the Yellow Vests who are next to him, and then there are me and another person who is a refugee artist, who you can just see her arm, her tattoo. Now, I'm bringing this in because this is what Flannery kind of like. This is the extreme of Flannery. This is the walking around of Flannery of a city that is not so much strolling, but it is it's an engagement with the crowd that we just don't have anymore in the post-pandemic age. So because this was shot in 2019, the way that we decipher crowds nowadays has largely been, or at least in my world, has largely been through protest, it's just a different way of holding on to space. I'm going to introduce you to a few artists, and I hope I'm not moving too all over the place, but this form of protest and this form of walking around, for me, it was, who are other artists in my environment that are doing the same thing? So without going too deep into these artists, they also use this idea of walking in spaces as a way to protest or a way to learn about the spaces that they're in. So Netapom was also a digital artist and a mixed media artist who's taking this idea of, how am I a foreigner in a foreign land, meaning how is he part Chinese and part, I'm pretty sure he's part Thai, walking through different spaces within walking through the United States, really. How does he claim refuge in the United States as someone who's been colonized outside through historicity and has been colonized here in the United States upon moving here at five years old? How is his language? How is his English colonized? How is his the places he's allowed to be without being just told that he doesn't belong here? These are all questions that he's had to engage with, and has to figure out what is his ancestry in the United States. These are artists that I've met, and that through residencies, meaning through just traveling with Ji Yun. I took the photo of her on the Santa Fe Trail, and these links are in that reference book. You can look her up and look up Netapom and see the work they do, because walking Detroit for Ji Yun was a way of exploring redlining in Detroit. The Santa Fe Trail was a way for her to figure out, oh, what is this route about? What is this paved road about? Because it's not American, quote unquote. It doesn't have the American values in it. It has indigenous roots in it. And what is it about what I'm putting on my body that is indigenous? Or what is it about me walking as a Korean American woman, what does it do to this trail? These are the questions that she's asking when she's walking Detroit, when she's walking, figuring out the delineations, the markings, the boundaries of redlining for Black Americans in Detroit as a Korean American woman. Now, these are all identifiers that she is qualifying herself in her performance. And by even taking the photograph, me taking the photograph of documenting the space that she's in, the media isn't really in the photograph. I'm trying to fit in as much as I can to say that the media really is in her discovering her space in walking this trail and allowing others to see that it's been documented, because the trail itself has been destroyed. The indigenous roots of that trail are now a paved road. So there's so many layers to unpack here that I think is just necessary to look at sometimes. Akirash I met in Memphis at the Crosstown Arts Residency. And again, I'm going to kind of lightly just say, Akirash is a performance artist. He does these huge installations with fabric, and it's a way for him to kind of really get some kind of reflection between his life from Nigeria and his life in the United States. That's my dad, who's actually from the Czech Republic, who's just walking in because I'm chilling at their house. And he had to come over across and you know, be a refugee almost in certain light as a white European male during the Cold War era. So that's another topic. I'm going to kind of click through these really quick, but Abdul is someone who also had to travel through Europe and discover his role as a refugee living in Paris. And there's a video link that I share. I'm going to kind of skip over right now. You guys can watch this in full, but I want you to kind of get to my work in a little bit. So I'm taking work that I primarily did in grad school because that's kind of like supplanted my travels for the past 2 years. So I graduated in 2018. I spent a year doing the work with strikeware, meaning building sculpture. And this work is more in line with what it means to be walking Baltimore City, or what it means to be as a resident of Baltimore City. So in 2017, and this is from, just to contextualize this work, I found that the refugee status of people in Baltimore were mainly centered in East Baltimore when I lived there. So it was Hispanic people coming in from Guatemala, or there was actually even some coming from East Africa and West Africa that were kind of in these various centers around the Patterson Park area. So there's like there's a refugee center off of Eastern Avenue that might still be there actually. And this particular engagement that I had with men standing outside of Home Depot had a lot to do with sorry, there's these sounds happening. Had a lot to do with me working at Home Depot and me working in construction. So I found that really figuring out what their space was important to me. How they navigated the space and how I am in their space and how they see me. So at this street corner where they stand, this is how I kind of mapped out their space. This is how I felt that either I was in their space or that they had to be in the space of Royal Farms and Wendy's. And for me to come here in the middle of an intersection and document it, there is some authenticity here, but there is a way to say that there's an inauthenticity when, say, this Google Maps takes over and documents these people also in real time. So you see a man standing there to the right. That's one of them. This is all in Google Maps. This is kind of like John Rathman's work with 9 Google Eyes. Again, we see these people, we see these men almost as place holders in a map that's constructed by a surveillance technology. And what I found more interesting was the human element that I could share with them, that I could speak Spanish, that I could actually figure out what they wanted to be in the space for, and how they were treated during their own how they were just treated in that space, how Royal Farms didn't want them to be there, how certain people needed them to be there. Home Depot needs them to be there to take on labor roles. And to me, the interesting facet of this was that it was a space that they come to every day at 6 a.m. in the morning. And I see them every day when I go either to my job at Home Depot or I was picking up stuff from Home Depot. They're not quote unquote flaneurs, which is the contemporary flannery. They are job seekers, but they are also deemed what flaneuring is as loiterers. So they loiter in the space. They're soliciting for some sort of engagement. And this idea in the United States and throughout the world, really, that we have to tie in place and space to capitalist structures. This is where we get a little bit more like political about what the intention is behind grabbing onto this idea of space. Yeah, I don't want to get too. So I kind of threw the word surveillance in there. I will skip over Jill Magid because you guys have a little bit of an insider information on who she is with the link that I sent you. But this piece is called Evidence Locker. And if I'm jumping around too much, I want you to know that there's a lot of themes that are overlapping in this work when we are exploring or discovering spaces in cities, or carting out a geography for how we walk about a space or anything, or how I walk about a space. Jill Magid was very keen on involving the police of various cities like London and in Holland, and seeing how the police would really, I guess she wanted to know what she could really take from being just a person who walks the streets. And her work was confiscated by the Dutch government after it was shown.
And I am.
And I'll let it play for this.
All right. Okay. Do what you want to do. Are your eyes closed? You can't see the wire. Yeah. I am. All right. Okay. Do what you want to do.
So I'm going to stop it there and move to me. Again, back to my work. What I think this is about is really, I would say, what a friend described almost as a psychogeography. We are maintaining that we have a kind of a headset of moving around a world. Like in our minds, we're thinking that, oh, I have to be a certain way when I go out in public. And other people are also watching me, so I will move around the space in a certain way. While I was in grad school, again, I picked upon this idea of just my body as a Black man, not even as or my body as a man when I go to spaces, just like Jill as a white woman, or just as a woman or as a person. We go in these spaces and we have people approaching us or watching us, or not, or just passing us by. And when I took the idea of just standing in a space or being with a sketchbook or with a kind of like an air of kind of maybe a little bit of suspicion, or maybe I'm looking at people a certain way, I would get approached. And that's what my work had been about for 2 years, is if I take a sketchbook in spaces, public or shared spaces, and I go and draw, what is the reaction that people are going to have with me in that spaces, in that public space? And I took this performance, and it was really a non-performance, but I took it to the Oculus Hub, which is in New York City. I took it to airports. I took it to the Capitol building, which I'll kind of get into more. And I noticed about a year and a half into my practice that this tactic of drawing or recording in spaces, mainly drawing, was on the Department of Homeland Security's website listed as suspicious behavior. Now, I've talked to architects about this, and I talked to an architect that said he was approached himself. He was approached in public space in a government building because they wanted to know why he was drawing the space as an architect, as a white man, really. And he said, it's my job. Like, I am doing this professionally. I, as a professional artist, am also doing it professionally, but also as a sociological engagement to see what, if any, need there is to approach me as I'm being the flaneur, which is lounging, sitting down, sketching, or just walking around. Why, how, or how are men approached in public space? Why are men and women approach, or how are women approached in different spaces, or non-binary gendered people? There's a lot of different qualifiers I think that one can say as to why someone comes up to you while you're in public. So when I did this, to me it seemed a little bit unsettling that I had 6 different police officers come up to me, police security, or I would say pedestrians come up to me, all men. And I think this footage shows something that's not quite too apparent that other parts of this work would show. And before I get to that, I think I can skip ahead. This is a little bit different. So the piece that you just saw with the police officers, I was wearing a body cam on my body, and that gets seen through this tower viewer that was also built as a sculpture. And it gets presented in the gallery space. It is a fine work of art, a fine art object. And in doing this, I'm trying to kind of say that, okay, how is the body represented as a surveillance tool, meaning the tower viewer? How am I represented as something to be surveilled, meaning, with the police that come after me? And what is the documentation of this, meaning the body cam? And what does any of that mean for the grand scheme of things as to why people approach people in public who are either idle or loitering or on full display as someone who looks suspicious? I'm talking about this almost as if you might know a little bit about me, only because I think that the higher topic is that we see this often in public space where loitering or suspicion on Black and brown people is really hardened. It's hardened who we are in the United States or throughout the world. There's like an American value system that places Black and brown bodies kind of at the periphery of our society, and we try to find ways where we can regain some positionality with who we are. When I take this performance to France, and I'll play this video in full, I'm invisible. So the flaneur, flannery is, the idea is that you're meant to be invisible. You're meant not to be seen. You're meant not to be really remarked upon. And I would like to say that I don't become the flaneur anymore when I go to France. I become either, it's like the audience around me, everyone else is a flaneur. Everyone else is strolling around. Everyone else is picking up on the little parts of the street that I'm not aware of because I'm not from there. So I act as a foreigner in this land. And this video I found kind of funny. I'll just play it.
Oui, mais oui.
Pardon, monsieur. Non, c'est pas grave.
Je ne dis pas, mais on a vu.
Oui, pardon, excusez-moi. Madame.
C'est l'hôtel, excusez-moi.
Très joli.
Merci. Vous êtes ici?
Oui.
De Cannes?
Le Canet en montant à l'autoroute en haut là.
Ah, ok.
Et c'est bien, on vient tous les jours à pied.
Ah ouais?
Tous les jours.
C'est bon.
Ben oui.
C'est bon pour la santé.
Exactement. Allez, bonne continuation.
Bonne nuit.
I see that it is 11:15, so I'm going to ask about the time. We started at 10:30. Were we okay? Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So there's this dichotomy that's at play here that I just kind of want to point to. In the United States, I would constantly get policemen to come up to me based on the places that I was in, but also the general sentiment in me was one of a little bit of fear when I would draw in the places that I went to. When I went to France, there was a difference. I had a sense of awe for the environment. So my lounging about, my sitting, my engagement with the space was more touristy. Even though I can speak French, I felt that I have this different persona that I would carry on from the United States as I would in France. This is where this kind of hardened me a bit, was that recently when the Capitol was stormed, I found the work that I started there when I started this whole practice was not meant to be political, in a sense that I would just go out and draw in public. I would document work environments, I would document spaces, but the making the work political came from really the spaces that I activated. So going to say, this is actually going to the House of Representatives, sitting down, drawing in a space, and knowing that I was documenting work environments, seeing the head of a woman over a desk, or getting my gallery card, meaning the gallery is the space, and mapping this out. This is, again, that psychogeography, mapping out what this space was to me, what this work environment was, to me, resonated with me. And I knew I could access these buildings as public space. And I knew that a lot of this work doesn't have to be political, right? Like, this is not a political, to me, the politicalness of it is the people in it, what makes the space active. The way the woman, in the dynamic between her and the man or as they would define themselves at these desks, and what their roles are, to me, was the political statement that was happening. It's not so much me being there. I was like a fly on the wall, and I was seeing how even just the representative from California, or the girl or the people at their desk, how they were working, how they had to navigate that area. So when I say the politics of what I do, isn't really, it's almost secondary. It becomes the documentation of the space becomes more about the engagement that I have with the people. So going to the US Capitol building and engaging with police officers in less than a minute, to me felt almost like, what is going on here? Why am I having these conversations while I draw? Outside in public, really in places that are tourist locations. I didn't really quite get it, to be quite honest. I wasn't putting on any suspicious behavior. But what I think it becomes is that when I sit down and I access this space, people are curious. There's a romantic engagement with this world of, oh, we see someone drawing, we want to approach them. And in this, when I do these drawings, I usually have someone photograph me. This particular time that someone was photographing me, it was a friend from grad school, and he drew that little drawing to the left. No one really stopped him to see what he was doing, and this officer came up to me, and in that approach, I really wanted to know, hey, I mean, do I look like a threat? Do I seem like out of the ordinary being here? He's like, no, I just wanted to see what you're up to. And we fast forward to today, to 2020, and we see, or 2021, excuse me, and we see that the building gets, the Capitol building gets stormed, or George Floyd's trial is on full display, and we question, what is the double standard that's happening between people who righteously storm a building, or a police officer who seemingly righteously kills a man on the ground who is basically not moving, right? What is the double standard? What is the hypocrisy on display for me as Chris Koizar, as I move around the world as a Black man? And I recognize that there's something happening that the hypocrisy of it, of saying that, oh, we can let some people go or handle this case by case, tends to say that we can handle Black men in a certain case, whereas when it becomes a group of really, I would have to say white men, where do we draw the line with them? So this work, it becomes political, not because I'm in DC, or not because I'm drawing in DC, or not because I get stopped by police officers. It happens because it's political because a lot of Black men get stopped by police officers in public space for being at rest or lounging around. And my qualifier, so to me, when my friend took this photograph, it kind of, he had to take a few of them, and this is a 3-year-old photograph. It was, a photograph speaks a lot of words. This one is really the dynamic that's happening on display to me, is that this officer came up to me from behind, and in less than a minute than after I started drawing, and he kind of probably was well aware that I was drawing something, kind of innocuously. So explaining to him that I was drawing a man lying on a bench, he had told me that that man had been on the bench for over an hour sleeping. And to me, it almost like, there's almost like a non-issue here. To be quite honest, the photograph displays more of what we have societally become to think that this is an issue, and it really is an issue for a lot of other people. I think the issue for me is that I get approached by a lot of different people in public space. The officers approaching me, they are almost there because they don't know how to handle artists in public space sometimes. They don't even know how to handle Bernie Sanders. And, I even dropped a slide in here that was Barney, the dinosaur, but we have to kind of like move on. It's okay. I want to kind of get onto this artwork here, because Trevor Paglen started this whole idea of what we get defined as in society without, we have these qualifiers placed on us. And starting this facial analysis or facial recognition program, he found that a lot of the images that we use to qualify certain people throughout the country or throughout the world tend to racialize or genderize or weaponize certain people. So in me doing this, this image roulette project, I came up with my face as a rape suspect, and encapsulating and putting this term onto somebody else, say my partner at the time was a white male, that might, he was totally categorized as someone different, as just I forgot the word, but it was almost the categorization system was just not as weaponized. When I find that I take a look at people, like some of the sociological experiences, or some of the I want to say sociological experiments, but they're more like they're people who participate in these drawing workshops. How do we categorize other people when we step out in public? How is this man's face as he draws read, or how is the people around him, how does he read the people in his environment to be suspicious or non-suspicious? This participant right here, Maral, whose work deals with skin color, which deals with gender, which deals with language, when her, I guess, her reaction to men approaching her are going to be different, are going to be sometimes charged, whereas it might even be racialized in her world, right? Because she's going out into the streets as a light-skinned Iranian person. Now, they know that they have to navigate the world as a person who has these qualifiers. So when this conversation on the right happens, that you see here, this is what she's drawing from her perspective of interacting with someone who she feels is threatening her. And in the photograph, much like the photograph that that I have of the police officer, it speaks volumes to something that might just be a non-issue, that no one gets hurt, that no one gets really put out of their situation, but they're having an interaction in an urban space. And I think that in today's terms, when we have the face mask on and we have to have social distancing, what are the interactions that you're going to have look like when you start going out in urban spaces, when you're going to be vaccinated? How much of a anxiety or a fear or some kind of draw in or draw away are you going to experience when you walk around urban spaces? I think that's very important to understand, that we have to move about our cities or our places or our spaces as protected. We wear masks in general when we go out in public space. We put on a different person, a different persona. And as artists, I think it's necessary to know that whatever you're performing when you leave your bedroom or you leave your house, the non-performance that it is still protecting some element of who you are. So I think when I'm documenting this kind of these engagements with these drawings, or with people drawing in public streets, where are the suspicions? When do the suspicions become real, become harder? When I'm defined as a rape suspect, or when this man is defined as a strange guy, which is the title of the piece. It's Le Mec Bizarre, meaning strange guy. This is how she felt he was to her. He was hitting on her. He was asking her for stuff. He was asking her for some kind of engagement. And and she takes this in a different way. Are we okay on time or no? Okay. Morale's work is basically this: is textualizing how she, as an immigrant, moves around spaces in Paris, and who defines her, who gets to define her.
Chris, I should ask my students just to make sure that they're okay with this extension. Yeah. So students, I guess by chat, are you all okay and sticking around just a bit longer, or a thumbs up? Let me see if I could.
We could even stop for a little bit on the slide if we want.
Should we stop and then maybe like field some questions, and then you could do like an extended version for those who could stick around? Or okay, so we do have a little bit more time. Can you maybe just spend another 10 minutes then, and then we will try and open it up. I really appreciate everyone being able to stick around just a bit longer. I feel like we're cutting you off, and we're just like getting more and more entrenched in the complexity of your work that really needs this like elaboration.
Yeah.
Right. So yep, 10 minutes, okay with you?
That sounds like a yes, I guess.
There we go. Thank you.
I'm tagging a lot of different artists because I think it's important to show that I pick up from a lot of different people's work, and they pick up from my work. So Morale and I still talk. She's living in Paris, or they're living in Paris. I still mess up their pronouns because French language messes up the pronouns, and they've accepted she as a pronoun to use. And this is what this piece is about. This is a play on words, because Morale is constantly saying, oh, like the man coming up to her feels like he needs to be in their world. And this basically says, let's play immigrant savior, my tongue against your tongue with the tongue. Am I enough to be oppressed, to have a political value? And then they go on. The words, it's just like the words aren't so much their work, but what Morale is distancing themselves from. And I'm actually very not great with the pronoun stuff right now, but Morale knows that the whole statement, my tongue against your tongue, against the tongue, is basically capsizing not just on this need to say, oh, I'm an immigrant, you want to have sex with me, you want to save me from my immigrant status so we can be married, speaking to the world at large. And this will be a way to go against the man. We will propagate kids, we'll have our own mixed race baby running around, and that's how we will gain a foothold in society, in French society. And the statement goes on to say, who is oppressing who is politicizing who, what is the value in me being an immigrant, what is the value in me speaking your language, what is the value in me kissing you to feel at home and in place with somebody. That whole positionality of what it means to sit there, as Morale is sitting right here in this photo, to have someone say, hey, you need me in your life as a man to take care of you, to stand in your world so that we can be together in French society, so that we can have kids and so that we can remain in society. I'm going to skip the South Park thing because it's kind of like the same thing, but you guys might know this episode. It's just an episode, just to save time. It's just to save time, and it's kind of funny. So Mina, when we originally talked, had asked that I shared this with her. And this is kind of just like a map of the countries where my DNA is represented. And in the left is my considerations of Afrocentric or Afro heritage, where the continent of Africa has basically been represented in my my bloodline through my mother. My father is represented in most of the other countries, and then there's a aspect of Europeanness that is also represented in my mother's bloodline, from ancestral ties to white men sleeping with Black women during slavery. So this is kind of like a general makeup of where my blood comes from, and I look at this and it seems inaccurate to me. And I want to kind of hit on this because there is a sense of trace ancestry and unassigned ancestry that is like at 1%. I have no idea what that is. Before they don't even know, but the perspective here in this map, in this cartography, is based on a corporate system. This is a system that engages in saying, let's make up a visual representation for how someone might read from where they're from. It says that I have no connection to the United States or to the land that the United States is located on, no connection to South America or various places. And in reality, I do have bloodline connection to, or at least my mother has an oral historical bloodline connection to the indigenous roots of this part of the Western Hemisphere. And this makeup, this map, this identifying system is claiming that my heritage is based on a wholly different part of the world that I don't access on a day-to-day basis, that I barely step foot in. I find it sometimes to be obtrusive when you're labeled in society as an artist, or even labeled in society as a person. Who's to say that this is my only representation of who I am, or who's to say that I have to be consistently defining myself when I go out in public and draw, or when I sit at home and I, am having a good time with my family. The ocean is just as much a representation of who I am. And that representation could be taken to be, oh, maybe I'm just this one part pushed out in the rest of the globe. Maybe there's another part of the world that has nothing to do with me, or another part of the universe that has a connection with me, right? So I'm just marking that, going back to my work with Strikeware, this piece is actually on display right now outside of Connect and Collect at the Charles Street location on 22nd. I'm not going to play the sound, but looking at this video and holding on to it, I think that really this was me traveling to Haiti to figure out also what connections I have with the Caribbean Isles. And in this piece, you saw a church, which is really a holding on to a Catholic system in Black culture. What is the Catholic system that identifies Black Catholics or Christianity in general? How has that become an identifier? How does this world, meaning the British Isles or the West Indies or Caribbean Isles, how are these identifiers, geographical identifiers to my Black heritage, to my Black ancestry? And how are they not? And that's kind of it. I think we can stop there for right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Maybe if you did the full screen, share screen, do you undo that in order so that we could see each other? Yeah, so first of all, Chris, thank you so much. You are an extremely brilliant and valuable new media artist, and I can't thank you so much. I mean, I can't thank you enough for being here for my students and also my, extended community, our community, the arts community of Baltimore. But for my students, especially because, they get to understand, like, this, just the act. You said, flaneurism, and I'm thinking, like, just tying back to little pieces of information that I know about, Paris and modernization of Paris and these recreational spaces and boulevards opening up. The act of walking was a way of flaunting and identifying beauty, and looking at each other. It was just like recreation, like, pre-TV time. And then how today we don't have that. It's not just about the mask. I think, like, post-capitalism period, our 21st century flaneurism, like, moved to the shopping malls, right? And then we're going from that to where the only form of flaneur is protesting, because our bodies actually are now targeted. It is no longer about presenting self as just existing in space. We are, with technology, location technology, surveillance, mapping in general is cartographying actually is a colonizing and censoring the body in space, right? With our recognition of marketing space. And I'm just wondering, like, now that we are bodies that are always targeted, right? And I mean, I'm thinking, I'm coming out of my Moderna second shot, flu-like symptoms and weakness, and my dissertation advisor, Avital Ronell, said that it's an ambivalent trap, right? The feeling of being liberated on one hand, feeling I'm safe, and then feeling not safe at all. Like, it is this continuous trap, whether it is being vaccinated in a very unsafe society or being an Asian female body now being so attacked on the streets, that this body is now a target for slashing and, just beating down or whatever. I mean, it's a continuation of, what's happened to George Floyd and everyone else. These bodies are not just profiled now, we are targeted. And so flaneurism, I think the only genuine flaneurism exists as a kind of protest. I feel like you can't do it as a filmmaker. You can't do it because the problems of cinematography and how you produce the gaze, with the medium. Like, in a way, being a new media artist with interactivity is like the only way to contain the embodiment, the psycho within the geography. It's so what you're doing using the medium is not accidental. Being a new media artist is not accidental to your identity and your cause. It is, I think, your selection, like the way, people, the selection is as important as the process and the concept and, the product of the work. You, as a new media artist you are producing the experience component that is taken away with the mapping strategies, right? Which comes with a kind of total omni-colonization, right, and censorship of our bodies. So I don't know, I think you're, like, so important for our time, so inspiring for our students. And I wish there's just more ways that you can be supported to do the kind of work that you're doing, and that our students have, access to see how you navigate in your development in your career. I'm just really so happy that you're here sharing this space, and I'm so in awe with the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Bina. Thank you. I think it's, a lot of times anyone can be accessing a lot of the tools that I use to do this work. So I would say do the window shopping, turn off your phones every once in a while, just go out and explore the streets, or figure out what it means to reinvent your city, what it means to sit down in a space, what it means to breathe. and be aware of, you guys are young, and it's almost like you feel like you have to get to point A to point B in the shortest possible way, and that's not always necessarily the case. Taking that route, taking those detours sometimes is valuable. So that's
should we open this up to some Q&A? Will you be up for that, Chris?
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious about where we can find your work because I'm really interested in looking at more of it.
Yeah, so I do have a Instagram, but you can probably just go to chriskozar.com and find a lot of my work. So ChrisKojzar.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Instagram is Christopher_KO. And it's a private account. So, but you're welcome to follow me. I put a lot of work up. I think it's funny sometimes. It's funny. So
thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your work. It's really interesting to see how in depth you went with so many different ideas that still tie into cartography and kind of, finding your, like, where are you in a very real and literal
I mean, that's a good question. I think we're all like a little bit like out of sorts with, or at least like professional artists are a little out of sorts about, I'm not regularly doing these Zoom calls. So literally, like, or figuratively, I think the world is sometimes much bigger than I'd like to think it is. I'm in my own world, right? Like I'm between DC and Baltimore right now. I'm in between like so many different career things. I'm on a lot of different like things like that. I haven't even talked about flaneurism in a while. I think we all just live it. We live flaneurism in a way that it's hard to even talk about lounging or loitering or being at leisure, which is what it is. So anyway, Sarah, thank you. I hope I don't know if I'm asking your question right, but I
know that definitely answered it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great question. Where are you? And your response was perfect, out of sorts. So for anyone, also to our community, arts community, and yes, Nicole.
Oh, please, yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to ask a little bit about the concept of like flaneurism, because it's like very hard for me to grasp, because I've never sort of felt like I just like had the ability to simply exist in a public space. It's so just like as a concept, how do you characterize yourself as a flaneur? Like have you ever truly been one if you're constantly conscious of the way that you affect others?
Yeah, no, it's kind of like an archetype. It's like a character reference. And to be quite honest, there is no quite good reason to say that flaneurism is the right mode of action to take for someone. So it is a classist role. It was reserved for white men back in the 18th century. And any Black woman that I've seen, or a Black gendered or non-gendered person or queer person to take it on, they do it in a way that's documentarian. So they're documenting their body as opposed to white bodies or white spaces, and then claiming that role of flaneur or the performance role. So the dandy role, the role of the dandeuse, if you want, like you, Nicole, as a Black woman, you have a different, people are approaching you in the world a different way, whether it's in a predominantly Black city like Baltimore, or in, say, if you go to Tokyo, or you go to wherever, like Geneva, you will be, or in Africa, right? If you go to Senegal, you will be approached in different ways. So to call yourself a flaneur, even for me to say it, is a little bit amiss. It doesn't hit the nose. you have to like find your invention in yourself and your identity. When someone exposed me to the idea, and this was only a few years ago, I had already been to France a bunch of times. I had lived in France. I had gone and protest in France. And so it seemed natural for me to take that on in a way, and then kind of make an incision in it and say, hey, what is Flannerism really? Because it's a fun trope, but the reality of the situation is, if you want to lounge around in the street all your life and be a bum, and what it comes down to, loitering and those qualifiers, then you're sacrificing a lot of the capitalist ideals that make this country so privileged in relation to the rest of the world. So the idea of the first woman flaneur, a flaneuse, was she was an assistant to an artist living inside a house. She was painting inside of a house. That was her public area in the 18th century. So, you know, the word is, I think is wrought in a lot of, you know, kind of like classist, gendered ideology.
Thank you for acknowledging and explaining that for me.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, Chloe.
Do you have with these specific pieces, do you have like an audience in mind for it, or like particular people that you feel like would benefit from like seeing this work?
I think the work with Strikeware, first off, let me start by saying that like that work is for everybody to claim a little bit of value system, a little leveling of your value system. The work that I do personally as an artist, that is a self-education. And in that self-education, my audience might emerge. But when I first started doing artwork and I moved to Baltimore City, my work was about being more comfortable saying that my mental state and my psychological state, hopefully this might like let others draw people in to be less anxious. I'm a very anxious person. So I use this to say, hey, if you go out in public and you do some kind of, I don't know, like if you're just trying to have fun or just trying to relax, like this might be a cue to do it, and like this might help you. You know, I appreciate the fact that I am able-bodied, so the walking is a big aspect of what I do. So if you like, I have to say, my audience has been more so, you know, I've had that question before. It's really, I haven't really decided or deciphered what that means, that question, that audience, because I think that one reflection of it is to say it's very academic, and it's like scholarly based, to make it more fun and more based in curiosity, so other people can approach it, or more mainstream so other people can approach it. I haven't really quite considered what that means, what it would be paired with to make it more mainstream. I mean, does that answer anything, Chloe? Or yeah, okay.
So off of that, if your work like reached nobody, would you still do it?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I mean, what I tend to do is I tend to jump around a lot between different art forms. So there's an art to conversation, there's an art to cooking, there's an art to cutting hair, there's an art to boxing. So my movement about the world, my art being my life or my life being my art, where the two intersect in the creation of it, in the creation of physical artwork for gallery purposes, if no one came to the shows, I would probably, you know, still do it. The creation of the work makes the work is part of a growth that I have, and it's fun actually. The administrative stuff isn't fun until it becomes obsessively fun and engaging. But the creation of work, I think, is, you know, it allows the mind to kind of keep moving forward into a different realm. You're always reinventing yourself as an artist. If you're not writing one day, you have to be doing something else, or drawing, or making music, or, you know, making sculpture, or running a business.
Yeah, Chris, I've been thinking about the way you work, and a lot of our colleagues in new media, especially that is tied to research and this kind of academic backing of the work that's created. And I've been finding that so valuable because it's creating culture, right? Of course, if you're making art, you are creating culture, and you're making art objects and all this. But one of the things that artists can do that's in a kind of expanded version of the role of the artist is this element of constantly reinventing, like you said, the context, responding to the context of the changing world. And more than ever, I really realized the kind of value that's created with the artist being the agent of the context creation. It helps with the collectability of art. It helps with providing the narrative that's a total conversation, and not just through the single viewpoint of a critic or the, you know, the receiver or the nobody, you know, like it actually allows the artist to say an ample more than just the solitude of the piece. And I feel this is the reason why students need to be in college, to be educated. And, you know, a lot of the projects that were created in this class about mapping body, mapping home, you know, occurred in the bedroom. It was about the bedroom space. We made a lot of, you know, bedroom art, right? We talked about this. But what's coming out of that is the persistence of the students wanting to learn, wanting to, you know, continuously respond to the larger context of the world that they live in, and also be participant to the education process that is so needed for the artist. So I don't, you know, we're at this point where we are completely demystifying the artist's genius, the romanticization of the artist in that one aspect. And in a way, we are kind of undoing a lot of different hierarchies, the, you know, the kind of the privilege, the classism that comes with making this, you know, the monumentality of art. So like, I think the micro assertions of creativity that's like culture building rather than making cultural objects, you know, again, the way that you're doing it through just your existence, you're challenging, you're always like, you know, pushing the boundaries, right? Those little minute actions are as important as like the big sculptures that you create, you know, like, and so anyway, I think it's such a, you know, inspiring point for the students to access that. It's like a really, like within the semester, a great moment, because we're diving into like contested spaces and, right, some of the concepts, even just like looking at the implications of social media and, you know, how identities are formed or questions and so forth. And I think your talk gives them so much more depth to why questioning cartography matters, right?
Sure.
So I really thank you so much for that. I just wonder, because of time, was there anyone amongst our sort of groups, our guests who wanted to say hello? And
that's fine. That's good.
I'm sure you'll be hearing from them later.
No, we hit a good dude mark. Yeah.
I'm going to request the permission of the students in my next class that the video can be shared, and then I will share it to everyone who joined us today and those who cannot, those who had to leave early and you know, who came in late, so that it's completely available but give me a little bit of time to organize that. And,
Yeah, I would love to see it.
yeah.
That stuff kind of makes me squirm a little bit, but it'll be good to see too. I would love to have it. And
I
I hope
don't know if you,
yeah, I hope you guys took something from what I said, if not just like a little kernel. You know, it's perspective that matters with identity, I think, in cartography and with placemaking. It is perspective, meaning how is your perspective not in line with everything else that might seem overbearing. You know, what is the undercurrent sometimes, or how do you align with certain perspectives that are already quite readily available. And that, like I said, that article is about language, the one that the Schotastic parrots. It's about language, and it's about how to where your language comes from and what you search for on the internet might not be what you're after. You know, that is a digital space that you have to navigate around virtually. It's like you're a flaneur or flaneuse or a loiterer in this virtual world of the internet. And how is your language, how is your lack of language in line or out of line with the systems that are already there? So that's what that article is about. And again, I think it's so kind of new and apparent that the controversies that you'll find are on GitHub or on Reddit. And the fact that those spaces are run predominantly by men, or that a lot of these internet companies are run predominantly by men, then your systems are already being, I see mostly women in this, on my screen right now, or mostly people who identify as she and they. Your voices are already stymied, like they're already pushed away to the periphery on these spaces, on these social media networks, because they're not designed by people like you. Your voice isn't there. If you speak a language that, you know, comes from an ancestral past, it might not be the mode to speak. It definitely isn't. You know, like if you speak Okinawan, if you speak Eritrean, or if you speak something that is on the periphery of English, where is that going to be? You know, that this is a mapping, a new mapping to space outside of the physical world. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got.
thank you so much, Chris, for your valuable insight and
It was great being here.
sharing your art. I also thank you to all my students for being here and sticking around for the extra time. And I want to thank the three godmothers here of justice,
Of
Leslie
course.
King Hammond, Lowry Sims, and Olitha Devane. Leslie King Hammond, Dr. Leslie King Hammond was my teacher and my mentor. And to be able to share this platform where Chris is presenting, it's a transgenerational connection.
For sure, yeah, for sure.
And for sure, without her generosity, I probably